Mwila stepped across the river, her feet barely disturbing the water's surface. The river, usually calm, began to churn, its waters turning a deep red under the moonlight. The villagers gasped, their eyes wide with disbelief. Whispers of magic spread like wildfire, some seeing it as a sign of doom, others as a blessing that heralded a great change. The ripple of fear traveled quickly through the village. Mothers pulled their children close, eyes darting nervously to the river. Fathers exchanged worried glances, unsure of what the transformation meant. But no one spoke. None dared to, for in the red waters, something far beyond their understanding stirred. Chito, the elder, rushed from the gathering, his heart pounding against his chest. The village's spiritual leader, his robes fluttered behind him as his footsteps quickened. As he approached the riverbank, his knees shook. The red hue that stained the waters was an omen, one he knew too well. The spirits had awakened, and they were angry. He fell to his knees, hands raised in desperate prayer, hoping the spirits would listen to his pleas for mercy. Mwila, standing tall in the water, turned slowly toward the elder. Her gaze was calm, unflinching, her smile cold. "You knew this day would come," she said softly, her voice steady despite the tremor in the air. Chito's eyes widened in disbelief, the weight of her words sinking deep into his soul. How had she known, and why had she come now after all this time? With a slow, deliberate step, Mwila advanced, her eyes never leaving Chito's as she spoke. "The prophecy that you chose to ignore? It has awakened." Chito's voice trembled with fear. "Please," he begged. "We've done nothing wrong. The river has always been kind to us. The spirits—" Mwila interrupted, her smile turning bitter. "The river's kindness ended long ago. This red water, it is not the work of magic. It is the truth being revealed, the truth of all your secrets." She raised her arms, gesturing to the village around them. "And the truth cannot be hidden any longer." The river, like an ancient beast, roiled beneath her words. The villagers stood frozen, unable to look away. They understood now this was not a curse to be feared. It was a call, an invitation to face the past they had buried for far too long. Mwila's eyes scanned the crowd, her gaze piercing and unyielding. This red river will not rest until every lie is uncovered. It has no mercy. The spirits have made their demands clear. A tense silence fell over the village. The air seemed to hang heavy, like the sky itself had drawn a breath and was waiting to release it. The villagers' hearts pounded in unison, the weight of Mwila's words settling into their bones. A storm was coming, and they were caught in its center. Chito, still kneeling, looked to the ground, torn between his fear and his duty. His mind reeled, fighting against the truth that Mwila had revealed. He had known, of course, that the prophecies spoke of this, of a reckoning, but he had never believed it would come. Not like this, not with the river's blood-stained waters. But now that it had come, what was he to do? Mwila's voice rang clear through the silence. "You have failed, Chito. You ignored the ancient warnings. You let the secrets fester until they poisoned us all." Her voice held no mercy, no forgiveness. "But now you will face the consequences." The villagers waited, their breath held as Mwila's presence filled the space between them. Her resolve was unshakable, her power undeniable. She had no fear, no hesitation. She was the force that would cleanse the land, and there was no stopping it now. As Mwila's words settled in the night air, the red river pulsed again, a symbol of the weight that had just been placed on the village. The truth had been unleashed, and there was no turning back. The fate of the kingdom was sealed. and the river would not rest until every soul had faced the consequences of its actions. Mwila's birth was a mystery wrapped in omen. Under the rare Mbaya moon, the sky itself seemed to shift as she entered the world. Villagers spoke in hushed tones, aware that her birth was marked by a celestial sign, a prophecy that claimed she would shape the fate of the kingdom. Yet whether that fate would be one of salvation or destruction, no one could say. The stars had spoken, but their message was unclear. Chola, her mother, knew well the burden that would fall on her daughter. As a powerful priestess, Chola had seen more than her share of signs and portents. She had lived through the weight of her own destiny, and now she must prepare Mwila for the same path. The village respected Chola, feared her, and turned to her for guidance. But even Chola knew that Mwila's destiny was unlike any other. As the child grew, so did the whispers. Some saw her as a blessing, others as a curse waiting to unfold. As an apprentice, Mwila was trained in the ancient rituals of her people. She learned the songs, the chants, the sacred dances, all meant to connect with the spirits and the land. But deep inside, something rebellious stirred within her. Did not wish to follow in her mother's footsteps, bound by tradition and duty. No, Mwila longed for something else, something freer, a life beyond the rituals and the expectations. Every time she performed the sacred acts, her heart felt more and more distant from the ways of her ancestors. She refused to be a servant to the old ways. The gods themselves, however, had other plans for her. The power within Mwila grew, untamed, unpredictable, and raw. At times, it felt like a curse, an unbearable weight that threatened to consume her. The visions came in flashes, brief moments of clarity, followed by waves of confusion. She could feel the earth beneath her, the pulse of the river, the winds that spoke of change. But she had no control. She was a vessel for a power she could neither understand nor contain. The magic surged through her veins like fire, and she feared that if it was ever fully unleashed, it would destroy everything around her. Then came the river's slow decline. The once vibrant waters began to wither, fading into a sickly pallor that no one could explain. It was subtle at first, a slight discoloration, but as time passed, the river's death became more pronounced. The villagers grew uneasy. The river had always been their lifeblood, their connection to the gods, and to see it die so silently, so painfully, was an omen too powerful to ignore. Mwila felt it too. The land itself was in pain. The air grew heavy, the earth restless. There was a deeper truth, a cause that lay beneath the surface, and she knew it would soon reveal itself. The elders, however, knew far more than they let on. They had kept the secret of the prophecy close to their hearts, fearing what might happen if it was ever spoken aloud. It was said that the river would turn red, marking the arrival of a force beyond their control, and at the center of that change was Mwila. The elders had long feared that she would be the one to bring the prophecy to life, for better or worse. But they had not prepared her. They had done nothing to prepare the village. They had ignored the signs, hoping they would disappear. Now, they were beginning to realize how deeply they had failed. Unchito, the trusted elder, had watched Mwila grow from a child into the powerful figure she was becoming. He felt a growing tension in his chest, torn between the loyalty he owed to her and the deep-seated fear that the prophecy might be true. His heart twisted as he watched her stand on the riverbank, staring into the fading waters. What had they done? What had he allowed to happen? He had failed to guide her, to protect the village from what was coming. And now, the Red River was rising, a symbol of the destruction they had all ignored. Kalombo, a young warrior, had watched from the sidelines, unsure of his place in all of this. Loyalty to his people, to the elders, fought with his growing, mistrust of Mwila. The river's transformation had ignited something inside him, a doubt that he could not shake. Was she the savior the elders claimed her to be? Or was she the cause of their downfall? His eyes lingered on her as she stood by the water's edge, her back straight, her expression unreadable. The red river had stirred something deep within him, a need to understand, to uncover the truth behind the signs. Kalombo's curiosity drove him to search for answers. The more he uncovered about Mwila's past, the more the pieces seemed to fit together. There was something about her birth, something about the prophecy that tied her to the land in a way no one had fully understood. She was the key to everything, both the destruction and the salvation of the kingdom. The truth lay buried deep in the past, hidden away in ancient rites and forgotten stories. But Kalombo was determined to find it. The fate of his people depended on it. The river would reveal the truth, but first, they had to confront the secrets they had buried for so long. The past was not finished with them yet. The kingdom trembled as the river, once a lifeblood for the people, transformed. It began to bleed, its waters turning red, dark as the sky before a storm. No one knew why. Crops withered, animals grew weak, and sickness spread like wildfire. The people whispered of dark magic. Some said it was the work of a god. Others blamed the priestess's daughter, whose birth had been foretold under the ominous Mbaya moon. Whatever the cause, the kingdom was unraveling. The elders gathered in desperation, seeking answers, and in their wisdom, they turned to the one they feared. Nachito, torn by his duty and dread, called upon Mwila. She was the key, they believed, but no one dared confront her until now. He summoned her to the sacred grove, a place where truth would emerge or death would find those who sought to uncover it. Mwila stood before Nachito, her eyes cold, her presence unsettling. The elder's voice cracked with anger, demanding answers. "Why do you defy us?" he thundered. "Why does the river turn against us?" She did not flinch. Instead, her voice was calm, almost mocking. "The river's blood calls for what was stolen," she whispered. Her words were riddles, wrapped in mystery. The elders stiffened, but no one spoke. The secrets buried in Mwila's heart, hidden for years, were now surfacing. "I seek what was taken from me," she continued, her eyes locking onto Nachito's. "And it has everything to do with the river." Nachito's face twisted in confusion and fury. "What do you mean, child? The river was sacred to us all. You think you can control it?" Mwila's lips curled slightly and she turned away. "The river was never meant to be a servant. It is not mine to control, but mine to awaken." From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. Kalombo, ever watchful, overheard the conversation. His heart raced as he pieced together the words Mwila had spoken. The river's curse, the red waters, and the prophecy. He knew the legend well. It was a tale of loss, of love lost to the river's depths. It was said that whoever could awaken the river's true power would change the kingdom's fate. And now Kalombo realized Mwila's heart was tied to the river's blood. A heartbreak, centuries old, bound them together. The village was falling apart. The tensions were clear. Mwila's followers, believing her to be the savior, clashed with those who feared her power and demanded her exile. The once united kingdom was now divided. Families fought, brothers turned on brothers, and no one knew who to trust. The chaos spread, and the kingdom was left reeling, uncertain of what the next moment would bring. Kalombo, caught between his loyalty to his people and the truth he was beginning to uncover, struggled with the weight of his heart. Could he stand by his people, the ones he had sworn to protect, or would he have to choose a darker path to understand the river's power? His heart pulled him in two directions, toward the truth, toward Mwila. The conflict reached its breaking point at the riverbank. Voices turned to shouts, shouts to blows. The air was thick with violence. Mwila's followers surged forward, pushing back those who wanted her gone. The river, as if alive, reacted. It surged and roiled, the waters turning a deeper shade of red, crashing against the land in a fury. It was as if the earth itself was speaking in the language of battle. Mwila raised her arms to the sky, her body glowing with energy, ancient power coursing through her. The river trembled in response, a low rumble rising from its depths. In that moment, all who watched knew something far beyond their control was about to unfold. The waters parted, and a figure emerged, tall and regal, draped in flowing robes. Kalombo, a priestess long lost to the river, rose from the red waters. Her eyes burned with vengeance, her every step a silent promise of retribution. The kingdom had thought her gone forever, swallowed by the river's curse. But Kalombo had returned, and with her return, the land would never be the same. Mwila's power had awakened something ancient, something forgotten. The kingdom was about to face a storm more powerful than any they had ever known. The Red River was not a curse, it was a call. And now, the true test of the kingdom's fate had begun. The kingdom had barely begun to heal when the river surged again, its waters darker and more violent than before. It was as if the very heart of the land had been corrupted, bleeding into the earth. The people watched in dread, whispers of ancient curses filling the air. They had thought the storm had passed, but the real tempest was only beginning. Then it happened. From the red depths of the river, a figure emerged, Kalombo. The waters parted, and the once lost priestess stepped onto the shore. Her eyes burned. With fury, her form changed, twisted by the years she had spent submerged in the river's depths. No longer a woman of flesh, she was something else, something darker, a spirit forged by betrayal, bound to the river's wrath. The village shook with fear. Some fell to their knees, calling her a demon. Others saw her as the vengeful goddess who had returned to reclaim her place. The once quiet river had become a battlefield, and now the warrior who had been lost was back with no mercy in her heart. Mwila stood at the river's edge, her gaze fixed on the spirit before her. Her heart raced, a flood of emotions washing over her: anger, betrayal, confusion. The truth hit her like a lightning bolt. Kalombo, the one who had abandoned her, was her mother. Her blood ran cold as the weight of the revelation sank in. Kalombo, the priestess who had left her to be raised by the elders, had set this path into motion. The river's curse, the red waters, the destruction, they were all her doing. Kalombo's voice was like the roar of the river itself, commanding and unwavering. "You should be grateful, child," she said, her eyes narrowing. "The river gave you life. Without it, there would be nothing left of you." Mwila's fury erupted, her magic flaring to life. "You stole everything from me!" she shouted. "You abandoned me, and now you return, bringing only destruction." Kalombo's lips curled into a bitter smile. "I did what was necessary. The river has always been our source of power. I gave up my life to bind it to my bloodline. You have inherited that power, and now you will understand the cost." The ground trembled beneath their feet. The village could feel the earth shaking as the two powers clashed. The river began to roar, its waters rising higher, a violent tempest building in the distance. Mwila's hands glowed with the magic she had learned to control, but Kalombo's power was ancient and untamed. The battle was not just physical, it was spiritual, a war of wills, a struggle for control over the river that had shaped their fates. Lightning cracked across the sky, and the winds howled like the spirits of the past. The tempest grew stronger, threatening to consume everything in its path. The earth groaned under the weight of the conflict. The villagers scattered, seeking shelter from the growing storm. But they could not escape the battle unfolding before them. It was as if the very land had become part of the war between mother and daughter. In that moment, Mwila saw the truth. The river's curse could not be broken by force. There was only one way to stop it, to end the suffering that had consumed her people, her kingdom. She could feel the power surging within her, but it was not enough. She had to sacrifice herself to seal the river's curse forever. With a final, heart-wrenching cry, Mwila made her decision. She would give herself to the river. Her magic flared, reaching out like tendrils of light as she bound herself to the river's heart. She called upon the ancient power, her life force merging with the river's flow, sealing the curse with her blood. The earth trembled once more, but this time it was not in anger. The tempest slowed, the winds dying down, the rain easing. The river, once red with fury, began to calm. The land, once poisoned by the river's curse, began to heal. Mwila's sacrifice had broken the cycle. The river's wrath was no more. The kingdom had been saved, but at a great cost. Mwila was gone, her spirit now bound to the river forever, a sacrifice that would be remembered for generations. The villagers stood in stunned silence, watching as the river returned to its normal state, the blood-red waters fading into the peaceful flow they had once known. The curse had been broken, but the cost was clear. Mwila's choice had changed everything, and the kingdom would never forget the price of peace. Kalombo, now released from the river's grip, stood alone, her heart heavy with the weight of her choices. She had returned to claim vengeance, but the river had claimed both mother and daughter in its currents. The land was still, the battle over, but the scars would remain. The river, once a fury of destruction, slowly began to calm. The red waters that had threatened to drown the kingdom in fear and suffering were no more. The dark current faded, leaving behind the peaceful flow that the people had known in their youth. The land began to heal, the crops that had withered now showing signs of life, and the animals that had suffered under the river's curse grew strong again. It was as if the earth itself had sighed in relief, grateful for the return of balance. The once chaotic waters were now a symbol of peace, a reflection of the deep changes the land had undergone. But while the river healed, the kingdom could not forget the cost. Mwila, the woman who had taken the river's curse into herself, was gone. Her sacrifice had broken the chain of destruction, but it had also claimed her life. As the river returned to its natural flow, the villagers felt both relief and sorrow. They had been freed, but at what price? Kalombo stood at the edge of the river, his gaze fixed on the now calm waters. His heart was heavy, torn between sorrow for the loss of Mwila and a quiet understanding of the greater truth. The land had been saved, the curse lifted, but the Ete, woman who had given everything to stop the destruction, was no longer with them. Her body may have been lost to the river, but her spirit, her legacy, lived on in every drop of water that now flowed peacefully through the kingdom. In the distance, the sound of celebration rose from the village. The curse had been lifted, the Red River a distant memory. But for Kalombo there was no true joy. The price of freedom was too high. He could hear the voices of the villagers singing songs of victory, but his heart ached for the woman who had made that victory possible. Mwila's choice had brought peace, but it had also shattered the future they had all imagined. She had sacrificed herself, and her memory would live on in the very river she had tamed. The villagers gathered, rebuilding the kingdom stone by stone, crop by crop, animal by animal. The curse was broken, and they were free to live again. Yet there was an unspoken understanding between them all. Nothing would ever be the same. They would carry with them the story of Mwila, the woman who had saved them all and lost herself. in the process. Her journey would not be forgotten, and the lessons she had taught would guide the kingdom for generations to come. The legend of Mwila was born, a story woven into the fabric of the kingdom. It was told by the fireside, passed down from one generation to the next. The young ones would hear it as a tale of power, sacrifice, and the importance of understanding the true cost of peace. Mwila's name would echo through the ages, a symbol of the strength of the human spirit and the price that must sometimes be paid for freedom. Her legacy would not fade with time. The river that had once bled red now flowed with a deeper meaning, one that would last forever, just as the story of Mwila would. Kalombo, now older and wiser, would often walk to the river's edge, remembering her. He knew that she had given everything, and though the river had healed, his heart would forever carry the weight of the sacrifice she had made. But even in his grief, he understood that Mwila had set the kingdom free. Her story was one of sacrifice, but also of hope, hope that the future could be rebuilt, that peace could be found even after great suffering. And so, with each passing year, as the river continued to flow, the kingdom grew stronger. The villagers worked together, never forgetting the lessons of the past. They would always remember Mwila, the woman who had chosen to give everything for the land she loved. Her legacy was woven into the very earth beneath their feet, and as long as the river flowed, her story would never be forgotten. Kalombo stood silently, gazing at the river's calm waters. The roar of the red current that had once swallowed everything in its path was now a quiet murmur. He had lived through its wrath, seen the lives it had claimed, and watched the kingdom tremble under its power. But now, as the land healed, he wondered if the peace would last. The cost of healing was steep. Lives had been lost, a kingdom had been broken, and a woman, his own heart's longing, had given everything to stop the destruction. The river, no longer a curse, now reflected a deeper truth. It was not merely magic or some spell that had caused the devastation. The river's blood-red flow had been a mirror of the kingdom's pain, its betrayal, and its violent past. The river had wept for the sins of those who had come before, for the choices that had been made in the shadows, and for the greed and ambition that had poisoned the land. Power had been abused, and the land had bled as a result. Kalombo turned his eyes inward, burdened by a realization that weighed heavier than the sacrifices that had been made. He had witnessed the fall of the kingdom, the curses, the battles, the lives lost. But he now understood that it wasn't power that had saved them. It was the willingness to confront the truth of betrayal, of bloodshed, and the consequences of the past. Only by looking at what had caused the destruction, by accepting the painful lessons of history, had the river been healed. Only through sacrifice could the land be redeemed. As he stood, the waters flowed gently now, a cleansing force. Yet Kalombo couldn't shake the feeling that something important had been left behind in the wake of the river's cleansing. Would the people remember the price that had been paid? Would they understand the lessons learned from the curse? Or would they, once again, fall prey to the temptation of power? He sighed, staring at the river as the ripples spread across the surface. He had seen what unchecked power could do, how it could destroy, how it could twist even the most well-intentioned hearts into instruments of devastation. But he had also seen how sacrifice, how true selflessness could lead to healing. Would the villagers remember the sacrifice that had broken the curse? Would they honor the life of the one who had given all to stop the destruction? Kalombo feared that time would dull the pain and the lesson would fade as the years passed. Would the people truly understand that power, if misused, would lead them back into darkness? Would they realize that redemption came only through sacrifice, not conquest? As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Kalombo's heart felt heavy. Tibi, kingdom was safe for now, the curse broken. But he knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, temptations, and tests. The true power of the kingdom now lay in the people's hearts and minds. Would they remember the truth of the past? Would they honor the lessons they had been given? Would they choose to walk the difficult path of redemption? Or would they slip back into the same mistakes that had brought them to the brink of destruction? Kalombo hoped they would remember. He hoped that the people would carry the weight of the past and use it to build a future free from the same blood-stained mistakes. But as he watched the river, once a symbol of death and despair, now turned to peace, he knew that the future was uncertain. The kingdom had been given a second chance, and with that chance, the question remained, would they rise or would they fall again? The kingdom's survival had come at a great cost. The past had been buried beneath the waters, but the lessons of history could not be erased. Only by remembering the blood spilled and the sacrifices made could they build a future that was truly free from the mistakes of the past. And Kalombo, standing at the river's edge, knew that the future of the kingdom rested in the hearts of the people who would carry this truth forward.